you still relying on reverb to create space in your mixes? You could be making a huge mistake. Rob here from musicianonamission.com, and in this video you're going to learn the simple vocal delay trick that could improve your mixes in seconds. This is the exact vocal delay technique I use in pretty much every mix, and learning this was a crucial turning point in my 12-year career as a mixer. So stick around and don't start another mix until you know how to get a radio-ready sound with vocal delay effect, because you're about to learn how to use delay on vocals like a true pro. And if you're ready to take a big step closer to professional mixes and you want to make sure you get this right every single time, be sure to grab the free cheat sheet that I put together for this video. There's a link in the description. Now, this may come as a surprise to you, but reverb isn't always the best effect to use on vocals to create space and cohesion, because there's a couple of downsides to using reverb. If you imagine being in a room with someone and their room had lots of reverb on it, it probably means they're way over the other side of the room. You're not really hearing their direct voice, instead you're just hearing the reverb. Well, that's what reverb does psychoacoustically. And if you add loads of reverb to a vocal in a mix, it has that effect of putting the vocal further away from the listener. And generally, we want the vocals to be nice and upfront, and we want them to be the core focus of the track. Now, there's another downside. When you're using reverb on vocals and there's a long decay time and there's a really long reverb tail that starts to overlap between the words, we start to lose some of the energy of the vocal. We start to lose some of the cohesion as well. And there's just various downsides to using reverb. It does have its place, but there is a better alternative in a lot of situations. Because without any effects, the vocal is going to sound really dry and out of place, and it's not going to sit right in the mix. So we need an effect that can create space around a vocal and make it sit better in the mix without putting the vocal further away from the listener, without removing the cohesion and the energy of the vocal. And while it does depend on the genre and the vibe of the track, delay is often a better effect to use to create space around a lead vocal. And even in tracks where reverb sounds great, you're still probably going to want to combine reverb with delay on the lead vocal to create a vocal that sounds big and epic, that sits well in the mix, but still stays at the forefront, right in the face of the listener where we want the lead vocal to be. So there's just one simple technique that I'm going to share with you in this video that's going to help you to do exactly that. With just one plugin, stock plugin in your DAW, you can create space around a lead vocal so it sits better in the mix, it sounds epic and full without the downsides of using reverb. And that technique is called a stereo slapback delay. A slapback vocal delay is just a vocal delay with little or no feedback. So in any delay plugin, you can control the amount of feedback. High feedback means that there's going to be lots of repetitions. So it's going to keep feeding back into the delay and you get that kind of echo, 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 echo sound where it's just kind of repeats. Whereas a slapback delay is when you use really low feedback and it will just be one repetition, like a slap back. So if you imagine, if you've ever been in a big venue, and you're listening to the band and maybe you're at the front of the stage and sometimes you can hear the snare kind of bouncing off the back wall. If you've ever heard that, what you're hearing is a really loud slapback delay. It's literally slapping back off the wall. And we can replicate that effect on a vocal by using 0% feedback or up to sometimes 10% feedback just to kind of make it sound a bit more natural, so that really it's just one repetition, and that's why it's called a slapback. And the reason it's called a stereo slapback is because we can use a stereo delay plugin and then use a different time on the left and right. So we've got a slapback on the left, a slapback on the right, but this might be 100 milliseconds and this is 150. And this creates this width and this 3D space. And this is the key, because then you're not only adding space and depth to the vocal and making it sit better in the mix, but you're also adding width and you're making the vocal sound larger than life. It's going to sound like it's jumping out of the speakers. And this is all while the vocal sits in the mix without sounding out of place or too dry. So I'm going to jump into Logic now to give you a demonstration of exactly how to do this so you can start improving your mixes right away. So here I've got a mix, everything else is finished, but I just want to add a bit of space to the vocal. Now, there are a few ways I could do that. I could use a reverb directly on the vocal like this. I can engage this and I could just adjust the wetness.
Long it goes on, never, never, I'll never, never know how long it goes on.
But listen to what that does in the mix. So as I increase the wetness, you'll notice that the vocal sounds like it's getting further and further away.
Long it goes on, never, never, I'll never, never know how long it goes on. Never, never, I'll never, never.
Can you hear that? So this is with no reverb.
Long it goes on, never.
And this is with full reverb.
Long it goes on, never.
Nothing else has changed. So that's what reverb can do to a vocal. And often it works. With this track, I actually opted to have a tiny little bit of reverb, just 15%, just to subtly kind of make it sit a bit better in the mix. But I stopped as soon as I could hear that it was pushing the vocal back. And if you are going to do this, make sure to use some pre-delay just to move the reverb out of the way of the vocal a bit. But what we're going to do now is add a stereo slapback. And with that, we're going to create a space around the vocal. So let's just solo the vocal, and I'm going to bypass this reverb for now. The first thing we want to do is create a new send channel. We don't want to do this on the channel itself, because then if it's on its own channel, we can add EQ, we can send other things to it. It's just way more flexible. So we're going to create a new channel, bus 11. I'm just going to go grab this and pull it down to our vocal. Let's call this stereo slap. So what we're going to do now is just increase that send. So it was 11. So that's that one here. We're just going to set this to 0 for now. And once this is set to 0, we're then sending an exact duplicate of this vocal to this additional channel. And the process for doing that is going to vary from DAW to DAW. In Logic, you just create a new send and it automatically creates a new channel. In other DAWs, you'll have to create this channel first. But then what I can do is just load up a delay. So I'm going to use the stock stereo delay in Logic. And we're going to change or make sure the mix is 100% wet. So if it isn't already 100% wet, you want to make it 100% wet on the left and right. And now what we're going to do, make sure these are unlinked, because sometimes they're linked together and you can't adjust them individually. So make sure they're unlinked. And we're going to start with around 100 milliseconds on the left and about 150 on the right. And let's just listen to what this does as I bring it up. So when the fader's down here, you're not hearing any delay. I'm going to gradually bring this in.
Long it goes on, never, never, I'll never, never know how long it goes on, never, never, I'll never, never know how long it goes on, never.
So it creates a space around the vocal. Kind of sounds like reverb, right? If you were going to use a small room emulation on your reverb plugin, it'd probably sound something like that. But we want to use a slapback delay. So the next thing we're going to do is just get rid of this feedback, because that's dictating how many repetitions there are, and we want none. So now it's a slapback.
Long it goes on, never, never, I'll never, never know how long it goes on, never.
Now I want to get a bit more gain on this, just so I can, I was getting to the top of that channel fader. So I'm going to increase the gain a bit on here and drop this down.
Long it goes on, never, never, I'll never, never.
So now you can really hear what's going on. So the next thing I like to do is maybe just add some EQ, so I can remove some of that bottom end so that it's not adding any mud or anything like that. And then also, if you want, you can add a tiny bit of reverb. So I'm just going to grab this one. I'm going to turn that on, and just a tiny bit of reverb on the slapback helps to sweeten it up a little bit.
Long it goes on, never, never, I'll never, never.
So at this point, we can start to play around with the timing, and this is going to vary depending on the track. I generally recommend starting anywhere between 50 milliseconds, which here is right at the lowest, up to about 200 milliseconds. Anywhere in that range tends to work. For faster tracks, you're going to want it faster, nearer 50. And for slower tracks, you can get away with having it here. But it also sounds more epic when you're using slower time. So let's do that. So let's go nearer 200.
Long it goes on, never, never.
Kind of sounds like you're in a stadium almost, whereas when I'm using a really quick time.
Long it goes on, never, never.
It's a lot more subtle. So now let's do this in the context of the mix, now that you've heard that a few times. So what I'm going to do here is just adjust the timing until I found kind of a sweet spot where it's sticking out the mix as much as I like, and it's kind of in tempo with the mix, it's in the vibe of the mix. And I'm going to just bring this fader up a little bit as well so it's loud in the mix so we can hear what's going on, and we'll drop that afterwards.
Long it goes on, never I'll never know how long it goes on, never.
So I'm happy with that. I normally find kind of around 100 works well. So we've got 89 on the right and 140 on the left. So now let's bring this down, and we're just going to bring this fader up until we can kind of start to notice the delay. And that's when we know it's at a nice point where it's subtle and it's kind of subconscious. And then from there onwards, you can push it more if you want it to be more obvious, or sometimes you just have to kind of leave it just tucked underneath, and that's enough to make the vocal sit better in the mix.
Long it goes on, never I'll never know how long it goes on, never I'll never know how long it goes on, never.
So let's compare. So this is without.
Long it goes on, never I'll never know how long it goes on, never I'll never know how long it goes on, never know how long it goes on, never.
So it gives the vocal a space, it makes it sit better in the mix. And then what we can do is add a bit of reverb if you want, so I'm going to bring this back in.
Long it goes on, I'll never know how long it.
And it does push it back a little bit, but I think with this track, it's not a really kind of in-your-face pop track, so I kind of like that. And then we've got a nice space around the vocal. Most of the work is coming from that stereo slapback. So let's listen again. This is without.
Long it goes on, never.
And this is with.
Long it goes on, never.
So give this a go. I think this is one of the biggest things you can start to use that's going to make your mixes sound professional, because you'd be surprised at how many tracks you hear on the radio use this exact technique. Combining this technique with mono delays as well, and time delays, that kind of stuff. But this is actually way more common for creating a space around a vocal and keeping the vocal up front and in your face than reverb is in pop and those kind of genres. In a lot of other genres, you can still use reverb, but it usually works best to combine a small, subtle amount of reverb with a stereo slapback like this. So if you want to actually go away and do this and implement it in your mixes and start to make your mixes sound more professional, more radio ready, then make sure you grab the free cheat sheet. It is completely free. All you need to do is enter your details on the page. There's a link in the description, and then you're going to get instant access to the PDF that breaks this down into a step-by-step process and has my recommended go-to settings. So you can go away, try this, and start hearing improvements instantly. So thanks again for watching. I'm Rob from musicianonamission.com, and I'll see you next time.